This is TWiT.
I was surprised to see this. Tim Cook said the revenue for Apple's wearables, watches, and AirPods is 50% higher than the iPod at its peak. Not just the iPod, you know, when it first started out. The iPod, he's talking to Mad Money's Jim Cramer. The iPod at its peak. That's stunning. The watch and the AirPods have each generated between 4 to 6 times more sales than the iPod had generated in the same amount of time since its launch.
I believe Apple Watch by itself is also, it's not 1.5, but it's also higher than iPod, it's so funny. A while ago, Neil Seibert put this thing up saying everybody thinks the Apple Watch is a failure and the Echo is a huge success when Apple Watch is selling, I think it was 10 or 20x because there's so much, we're all dealing with imaginary numbers. Like Apple doesn't disclose Apple Watch numbers, Amazon doesn't disclose Echo numbers. So it's like all fantasy math. But when you start looking at how much of these things are going out the door and how much of the percentage of the other category or now the new wearables category, people like Neil can start to piece these numbers together, and Tim just gave them away. And it's a huge market. But when you look at how big iPod was, and then you look at how big Apple Watch and AirPods have become, and those are all dependent on iPhone, you start to understand why all this decade of building up iPhone as a platform kind of set the stage for using iPhone as a platform to build up the next decade of products, the way iTunes and iPod built up iPhone. And that's one of my favorite aspects of Apple, is that they're one of these companies that never mistakes their product for their business. Like Apple never became an iPod company the way that Microsoft for a long time was a Windows company, and they'll ride this into the last dime. Apple's like, okay, this is going down. We're going to get the iPhone up. Okay, iPhone is going down. We got to make sure we have the AirPods, the Apple Watch, everything else prepped. And you start to see these in the results. And when you take away the iPhone distortion from this quarter, I think Cook said they're going to be up 19% on almost everything else. Which is super interesting. It's going to be the second biggest quarter in their history. I mean, they're still going to get killed for it. It'll be the second biggest quarter in their history.